So, hi, everybody. It's Falcon Napier. Welcome to the Oracle of the Self. Today, we're going to be doing an interpretation session for the exploration we recently did on dealing with difficult people. Those of you that are listening to the recording, if you have not completed the ChangeWorks profile on dealing with difficult people, you will find a link to complete the profile in the description block under the YouTube video. For all of you who did fill it out, you should have received an email with a link to your results. And so if you haven't done so already, you might want to open up that email so you're looking at your personal results as we work our way through these kind of collective results. So just to kind of review things with you guys, every week we try to come up with a new life situation that we think people would find interesting and useful to explore in a bit of greater detail. And so we come up with a list of mission critical activities about that particular life situation. And then we use our ChangeWorks system to get a feel for where everybody is. And so this particular ChangeWorks profile had activities on it like evaluating whether interactions with difficult people are worth my time and energy, and speaking my personal truth, and restoring my mental balance. So we pretty much put together a list of 12 activities we thought were sort of central to this subject of dealing with difficult people. And you guys put in your responses, and today we're going to be looking at some of the collective results of that. Now, I do want to draw something to your attention. That is that when we're looking at a small group profile, which is any group of 26 or under, you're going to be able to see people's names as we scroll through this. Now, everyone who has completed this particular profile has already granted us permission to that their names can be visible, and so no harm, no foul. But if you'd like to protect your anonymity, remember that when you fill out a profile, you can create any name you want. If you want to be Elmer Fudd, you can be Elmer Fudd. You can be anybody you want to be. The only thing that you have to make sure is absolutely correct when you fill out a ChangeWorks profile is your email address. Otherwise, there's no way for you to get your results. And so make up a phone number in that field, make up a name in that field if you want, and then you don't need to even be concerned about someone seeing the list of respondents. Once there's more than 26 respondents, all of the names are going to end up vanishing, and all we're going to see instead are little symbols that indicate how many people out of the big population plotted in a particular spot. So anyway, you can easily protect your anonymity just by creating a fictitious name. You just need to remember what fictitious name you created so that if it does come up in the discussion, you know we're talking about you. All right. And so what I always like to do when I'm first looking at the results of a ChangeWorks profile is go to the statistical analysis. And so in the statistical analysis, the thing I'm most interested in is the ranking section. And that's what you should be seeing on your screen right now. If someone wants to confirm that for me, you should be looking at rankings.
Yes.
And the ranking that I'm most interested in is how important you considered each of these activities. So remember, you were asked to rate yourself across 4 dimensions. So those were size, ability, challenge, and importance. When it comes time to read a change grid, particularly when we're doing kind of a group read, I need to pay attention to where people's tension is. I need to focus on the things that the respondents consider to be most important, because obviously in the amount of time we have for a debrief session, we're not going to be able to talk about all 12 of these activities. And so I like to go to the importance ranking, and that's this 4th block in the rankings. You can tell which ranking is which because of the numbers being bolded. So in this particular case, importance is what we're looking at here. Now, before we get into which activities fell where for importance, let me point out to you that you all rated the importance on average between 9.1 and 10.9. That is not a very wide spread. In fact, this is in the solid middle of the importance scale. We could have gone all the way up to 12, but we saw some as high as 10.9, some as low as 9.1. Now, this is a very, what do I want to say, sort of confirming, affirming, a sort of a data to look at, because it tells us that we came up with a good list of activities. that all of you considered all of these activities to be important enough that you ended up averaging out to being in the moderate level of the high importance range. Okay, anyway, I don't know if I'm just only one who finds that fascinating, but I find that fascinating. Interestingly enough, look at the activity that you guys all consider to be most important. That is communicating in a manner that doesn't make things worse.
Mhm.
I thought that was very, very interesting. If we look at the next one, maintaining calm during challenging situations, and then the third one, restoring my mental balance after an interaction, and that one's tied, by the way. Usually, I don't want to talk about three, but that's tied with managing my emotions, biases, and emotional triggers before I engage with a difficult individual. I think this is really telling that you guys, on average, consider getting your own stuff together is really the most important part of dealing with difficult people. When it
Mhm.
comes to the procedural sorts of stuff you do when we're working with a difficult person or whatever, those kinds of things, while you still consider them to be in the moderate level of high importance, anything above an 8 is a high importance, you still said, no, those really aren't where I need to be focusing my energy. But these activities, communicating in a manner that doesn't make things worse, maintaining calm, restoring my mental balance, and managing my emotions were the top four. I also can't help but notice what number 5 was in the importance ranking with a score of 10.4, recognizing when I am the difficult person. And so I thought this is a lot of introspection that's being shown. And in, a pursuit called the Oracle of the Self, this really is more about you talking to you about you than it is about any specific um, interaction you might be having with another person. Is it just me, or do any of the rest of you find that a rather interesting kind of an insight into the group?
I think it's interesting, but I also think that the activity list was excellent, like brilliantly done. But I think it also the subject matter is a hot topic of the time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because there doesn't seem to be a balance of things anymore, where it just go from one extreme to the next. We think about, the political cycles coming up and all these kinds of things, and the noise online. So I think that I think I'd rank a lot of these above 10.
Yeah, right, 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 right.
It's such
So
a
did
hot
I.
topic.
I rated some of them at 12.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, good. I mean, I'm glad we came up with a solid list. And but when it comes time to like now provide the feedback, we always want to obey our rule. Our rule is pay attention to tension because we know people pay attention to where they find their tension. And certainly importance is a big contributor to the level of productive tension you're experiencing around something. The second thing I think was interesting was looking at the challenge rating. Now, again, keep in mind those high importance things we just talked about. But now I go, if something's really important to you and you find it really challenging, that tells me it's something we really need to talk about. And the number one that you had was communicating in a manner that doesn't make things worse.
Mm,
Now, in all fairness, if you look at the challenge of something, high challenges, 8 or higher. So only 2 of these had fallen into the high level of challenge. So again, communicating in a manner that doesn't make things worse and recognizing when I'm the difficult person. So that got, 9.1, 8.4. You did have a couple at 7.9, which is right there. Managing emotions, maintaining calm, they just so it's kind of a similar ranking to what we found for importance as well. That's not always the case, but I thought that was interesting. Now, we also want to spend time talking about activities where people on average rated their ability as being low. not high this time. We want to look at the low scales, because if you have a low ability to do something that you find very challenging and it's very important to you, that's a very different dynamic, a very different situation to be working with. And so if I look at the ability rankings, again, I'm more interested in the low scores. What did you score low? Communicating in a manner that doesn't make things worse, recognizing when I'm the difficult person. And then there was a couple about reflecting on interactions to identify areas of growth. So that tells me something important. And managing your emotions, restoring your mental balance. These 4, if not 5 of these activities, there's remaining calm. So these 5 out of these last 6 that we just looked at seem to be appearing in multiple rankings that tell us as human development professionals, or as people who are learning about how to monitor and manage our own levels of reductive tension and everything goes along with it. There's a pattern here. And it's something we need to take, I think, a deeper dive into today. So hopefully we'll be able to cover at least 4 of those, maybe 5, maybe 6, depending on how much dialogue we have around them. Before we launch into the actual change grids, anyone have any comments, questions, thoughts?
So based on your analysis of this, would you start with those, or would you look
Absolutely.
at
Now, the
change
rule is
grids?
always pay attention to where people find their tension. And if I was in my role as a corporate trainer, I would be saying to my client, resources are limited. We only have so much time that we can devote to doing a training program. You know, they're not willing to send people to multi-day training programs all that often. So they're going to give you 2 hours. Well, we better pay attention to where people find their tension. We need to focus on things that are important and problematic. And in this particular profile, we've just gone over those 4, 5, 6 things that are consistently showing themselves to be very important and problematic.
T,
Yes.
it seemed to you that it seems to me that these have to do with other people. And, you know, you have to understand that you cannot change other people, but,
Right.
you know, that seems to be the quotient here, the portion that people stumble on.
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. And so if I can't change them, and by the way, I do believe we can affect some influence on people, but at their fundamental
But not
level,
all people.
well, it is exactly right. Exactly right. On the other hand, I know that I can help you guys get better at changing yourselves. And so it may very well be true that when it comes to dealing with difficult people, the most practical piece of advice I can give you is avoid them whenever possible. You know? Because that's the easiest thing. If you can avoid them, just avoid them. If you can avoid the subject, avoid the subject. So, you know, we can certainly say things like that. But really, I want you guys to get better at that. Again, oracle of the self, you talking to you about you when it comes to a given situation. So when it comes to a conflict with a particular person, can you stop for a few moments and kind of go, first thing I got to do is get myself square. So what are my thoughts? Where's my mind on all this? What is it that's really me causing the upheaval? Maybe not in the situation, but in your response to the situation. What is your role in crafting that response, if you will?
Right.
On this,
And that's for me what communicating in a manner that doesn't make things worse. That's how I reflected on that
yeah.
as a role responsibility. Not so much about the other people, but I certainly don't want to add to it. And I'm not,
Right.
it seems like, and I said this before, I thought when you get older, you get more patient with that. But it seems like I get triggered rather easily by some dumb shit, and I don't I waste time.
No, it's true.
So
Yeah, because that assumes that other people will evolve as well, and they don't. That's the worst thing that I've learned about retirement.
That's right.
I assumed people would be a bit more evolved, and they are not. So that makes me patient.
yeah, it's a learning process for me to kind of, I'm only 54, so to kind of take that in, I'm like, I used to be so easy with this in terms of going inward, but now it seems like I'm stuck on like, okay, and after the fact, I have to go and apologize because I did not communicate in a way that made things better, it made it worse. And that's what this
No, they were stuck on stupid.
Well,
that
yeah,
too,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I can't change that part.
And again, um, there is a opportunity for us to say, my responses to things are under my control.
Right.
And anytime I think or say otherwise, I'm lying to myself. So
Mm.
I am responsible for my responses to something. And it may very well be that if you guys do a better job, more effective job, I'm not judging anybody, but to these key things like communicating in a manner that doesn't make things worse, recognizing when you're the difficult one or what you're contributing to the situation, learning how to stay calm, manage your emotions before, during, and after. That's what we say, restoring the mental balance after an interaction. The better you get at these things, why do I think that the overall difficulty that you're experiencing with other people might mellow out a little bit all by itself?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with that, T, because, just taking some classes on exactly those subjects, it kind of
Sorry.
you around to understanding maybe what those people, you may not agree with it, but you might start to understand why they're saying those things. Now, I'm not talking about extreme,
Mhm.
even though you can try to understand them, but I mean just everyday people who have different opinions
Yeah.
than you.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So again, this is how I like to start working with a profile. I want to see the rankings just so I know where to put our energy. Now with that, we can go and look at the change grid itself. And so the one activity that was the most problematic was recognize,
7.
what's that?
Number 7.
Number 7, communicating in a manner that doesn't make things worse. And so I'm going to go ahead and select that activity and then view the change grid. Now, again, your names may incidentally appear. If that bothers you, I'm terribly sorry. Give me a fake name next time. You won't ever have to worry about it. However, it's very important that you guys know which one of these numbers represents you. And so the best way for you to do this is to look at your change grid and where activity number 7, I think that's what you said, right, Brian? This is activity number 7, actually plotted. And so if you look where the number 7 is, you should be able to see which alpha character you are.
And I am F.
Okay, thank you so much for volunteering. I was going to call you out on that. But I could show you the list to make it easy, but you guys understand it's a really simple thing. You look at where your number plotted, and then you look at the alpha character, and you should be able to determine which one you are if you want to keep things anonymous. If you don't want to keep things anonymous, then not only am I happy to point out who is where and talk a little bit more specifically about things, but again, you can always create a fictitious name if you prefer to do that. Okay, now this particular activity again was about making sure that you're not contributing. Was that what we said? This activity is, yes?
Right, communicating.
Making that, yeah, it doesn't make things worse. Communicating in a way that doesn't make things worse. Now, ideally, this activity should plot on the change grid where you see the diamond. So the diamond is laying on an area of the change grid where we know someone is more likely to be an analytical driver. So for people that are new to this, one of the layers of the change grid talks about the energy that we have around a particular activity. And this particular activity is best performed by someone who has an analytical driver energy around it. So the driver energy, which is primary here, wants to make something happen. That analytical secondary energy says the way that I want to make something happen is by knowing what's going on, understanding something, having command of whatever the insights, etc., happen to be. So do you guys understand why an activity like communicating in a manner that doesn't make things worse is something that would benefit from that analytical driver kind of energy?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're seeing possibilities, number one, or they're at least willing to perhaps explore them. Whereas where I am, driven driver, I think I've even told a couple of people, I don't give a you know what.
Yeah, right.
And that doesn't work. But
Right.
I think it's double frustration because again, I used to be quite patient. I feel like I'm losing that. So I don't know what's going on.
Well, and let me use that as a moment to just say to everybody, while on these calls we're going to focus more on the collective group, when we do have someone who's willing to step into the fishbowl, we might as well take advantage of that situation. So I'm going to select all activities, deselect all of you guys. Let's just look at Brian for a second. So here's
Oh,
Brian's change grid. Why, looky, when it
yeah,
comes to the energy he has around it, look at how much stuff is piled on top of driven driver,
yeah.
driven driver. So let's just stop there for a second. And by the way, for those who are new to explorations on the change grid, if you just attend a handful of these, you're going to start to understand exactly what these labels mean and these different layers all mean. So don't let yourself kind of go like, I have no idea what these people are talking about. We promise you, you will know what we're talking about. And there's plenty of ways you can learn to do this on your own. Just visit our Patreon community and you'll see what we have available there. Now, Brian is very much a driven driver. Even this cluster of activities here, 3, 5, 8, and 10, are all on that border between an expressive analytical driver and an amiable driven driver. So, he's on the border kind of there. This is the energy. When it comes to dealing with difficult people, do you guys think the driven driver energy is all that supportive when it comes
No.
so
Dude,
why is this a bit of a problem overall for the
you
plotting?
need to back down a bit and let them speak.
Yeah, there you go.
Not come at them like a freight train, but more like a soft
A butterfly.
Butterfly, yeah.
No.
more like
But,
a bike
but
with
that's it.
a two-seater bike.
A butterfly with a
Right.
stiletto.
So I need
All
a
right, so
timeout.
right, and so you get the idea. Now, again, this is for everyone. We're going to be focusing on specific activities and how the group is responding to them. But it may very well be that when you look at your personal change grid results, you say, I want to know more about what this actually says about me. And
Right.
obviously, as I've said, you can do that if you get to the ChangeWorks community or you get to our Patreon page. There's lots of free stuff up there for learning how this stuff all goes. There's plenty of YouTube videos. There's all kinds of things you guys can do. You can also arrange to have a private reading done of your particular change grid. That's also on the Patreon page. But in this particular case, we all might as well become Brian's coaches and say, Brian, overall, and again, things could be different if we look at certain activities, but overall, you need to chill, man.
Yeah.
This is way too aggressive of an energy when it comes to dealing with difficult people. What do you think they label you as being if this is the way that you're presenting yourself to them?
Well, remember the word that was used to describe me was he's intense.
He's intense. He's intense.
But you know what's interesting about this for me and reflecting back on this is not my nature. But the idea of when I was doing the activity, the things that literally came to the forefront of my mind is all the past experiences
Of course.
that drew it. And so that was like at top of mind for some reason, although I could have went inward and be like, what's really about the nature, but all these other voices came up.
Right. And so
Typically that's
Brian,
a way of approaching how people approach the change grid itself.
very often, again, remember the change grid is just a mirror that's reflecting the conversations that someone is having with themselves about themselves. And whether you stick with the specific question that was asked, or you kind of generalize it and that ends up leading you to even more thoughts or whatever, we know that this is an accurate reflection of how you're feeling about that subject overall right now.
Got it.
Obviously, if you were working with a coach, you might want to discuss some of these things very, very, specifically. But again, this is the Oracle of the Self. This is about you guys learning how to do this all for yourself. And so that's why I must say, Brian, You know what these locations all mean, 6th and 7th degree intensity. You know what these things mean. What is it that you are currently doing to manage these activities to a more effective sort of level? You've got any
Yeah.
ideas you want to share with us? Yeah, or anyone you want to counsel him? What should he be doing?
Deep breaths.
Yeah, well, deep breaths would certainly help. Certainly
Yeah, I
help.
think I just need to give myself more time because of many of those incidents, and like Linda, I journal. And so I literally, during the retreat, reflected back on 12 incidents, 12, where not only did it trigger me, I snapped, gave a response, or better yet, reacted. And
Mhm.
then my soul itself convicted me to where I went and apologized because I
Okay.
knew that's not the way that I typically would respond to it. And so there's 12 incidents that way where I was just off center. But I found when I give myself time, say, hey, give me a moment, and I come back to it, that's when I'm responding. But whenever, again, as a highly sensitive person, so whenever I'm overwhelmed with stimulus, I'm just gonna come out fighting, and I don't give a
Well,
shit at
right.
that point.
I am
So
Brian.
let's-
Can you record any of these sessions, these things? Like
No,
just
I don't. Right, I reflect off of each interaction that I'm
No,
in.
we want to see them.
no
Yeah, we
on
want to
your
hear you. We
phone,
want to be flies on the wall.
on your
Mhm.
phone.
Oh no, I don't. No.
Okay, well,
Let me
They
just-
probably happen spontaneously, Brian.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
right,
absolutely. Because they're never
Well, Brian-
planned. These are things that have, some of these things have compliance issues. So they're kind of, in my mind, common sense, and people just don't pay attention to them, and then they give, a half-ass answer or something
well,
like
right. But even in your words there, you're describing this as being an issue with them
that.
instead
Yeah.
of an issue with you.
Because it's something that I'm thinking like, okay, if it's a compliant issue and we can get sued for it, like, don't you
Right.
like not understand, or you just doing it your way?
Yeah,
There's ways that I
Well-
could still ask better questions,
sure. Go ahead,
uh,
Anja, what were
bring
you
it
going to say
out.
there?
I was just gonna say, Brian, I understand you were right.
Right.
You were right. That adds to the frustration.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
You're
it's not the
absolutely,
best way though, and so it only adds to it because then they don't want to come back to me at all. And
well,
then
right.
just
But
make
here
a
again,
mistake.
this is the oracle of the self. And so a couple of things that I wanted to bring up as far as hopefully helpful pieces of advice, as far as not contributing to the negative aspects or not making a situation worse, are two things. First of all, you have to manage your expectations in the relationships with other people. You're
Mm,
expecting them to behave in a different way, a way that matches how you think they should be behaving, thinking and behaving.
mm,
And there's two issues with that to look at. Number one, such an expectation needs to be evaluated to begin with. But number two, you've not just met these people, you've known them for a long time. They're not coming up with new patterns of behavior. You're seeing the same patterns in behavior repeat themselves. Am I correct?
yeah, but doesn't that make it worse?
No, no.
It worked for
It,
me.
it makes it worse as a reflection on you than it does on them.
No, all the more reason they should know what they're doing and they should respect the intensity and the and the God, what am I looking for? With the forward
Right. Yeah. The
forward
conviction
view.
that's in it, the rationale behind it, all of
Yeah.
that is very solid. But I will suggest to you, all of you for that are listening to this as well, that
Uh-oh.
behaving in the danger zone when you are in a situation like that where they really should be seeing the truth, they really do need to know this. I don't think that we can force it upon them at
No,
this
of course not.
location.
It's so
Right.
frustrating.
And so that's why we're saying to
Yeah.
Anja's point, you gotta mellow out. You gotta come to this side of
That
things.
makes sense.
Breath.
My
Right.
wife used to have that kind of impact on me because I have a standard about doing something. Again, I don't just, do anything kind of half-cocked, like
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
I's dotted, T's crossed. But my wife used to always talk about this idea. Well, you can't expect everyone to live up to your standards.
That's right. That's right. Because you
And
even
that-
just said it. You have standards. You have
Right,
this.
right.
Okay. So,
tough.
good for you. That doesn't describe the whole world.
You know what?
Yeah.
T, this is where I think it's important to get in alignment with them. And I do that physically by not, being opposite polarized. I stand by them kind of in the buddy position. I then switch to we language, like
Yes.
what can we do about it so that I enforce that alignment. So I think that's the time to be aware and then ask the question. So they're participating. It isn't you against them, but
Right.
you're inviting them in. How do you feel about, the whole situation, and what can we do differently? Because then you get a team feel. Anyway, that's what I do.
No,
Yeah.
you're exactly right. In fact, I did include the article. It's a two-part article. The first part of the article is always setting the stage. What's the problem? What are the ramifications of the problem? How do you know when you're in the problem? So the first article kind of sets that stage and then asks you to complete the ChangeWorks profile. Well, the second article, which I'll make available to you guys following our call today, are the remedies. And among those remedies are the things that Edie just talked about. So there's plenty of ways of fixing what's going on, but we want to make sure that you guys are fully aware of how you happen to be responding. Now, I said, Brian, there were two things I needed you to know before I got into depth here. The first thing, as we said, was that you have to manage your expectations before you do anything. The other thing is that your plotting and the story you've shared with us gives me reason to suspect that this conflict arose in your head long before you came face to face with them.
Absolutely.
So you were stewing on this long before.
Absolutely.
All right. And so
I had no pick of these people because they would have went through a process, because I typically, to Edie's point about alignment, I would have better understood what their needs are, would have better understood where some of the gaps are, so that we don't have, risk and compliance issues, because then I have to deal with all of that. So the fact that I had no part in that, I was like, okay, I literally said, and I have a journal entry, this is going to be a hot mess.
Yeah. All right. And so again, we'll be taking a look at, how to recognize when you're the difficult person, but just looking, again, this is your grid. Brian, it shows that you have a tremendous amount of leadership or role you're kind of stepping into when it comes to all these activities about difficult people. The thing you always want to remember is that ideal leadership occurs at 10-10. If you're going to be further outgrid than 10-10, you're going to be in that danger zone. It's going to undermine your leadership success, because rather than leading it, you're going to be more forcing it. And that can end up causing a whole lot of problems that spill into a whole bunch of these other areas that we're looking at. Okay. Wow. So that's enough about Brian. Let's kind of go on to another activity. Anyone have any comments for
what
Brian?
Was the other humanity expectation?
But that was enough about Brian.
Yeah, but enough about Brian. What do you think about Brian? All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at another activity. I believe the other one was recognizing when I'm the difficult person. So this is number 8. Let's go ahead and view the change grid around that. Oh, sorry, I only selected Brian. Let's look at all of you guys. View the change grid. And now this is really very interesting. The scatter pattern on the change grid. Let me switch back to just our composite background. We can see what's really going on overall. And again, for those of you who are new to our work, all these lines do mean something. They do represent different layers. Those of you that are practitioners, you can easily create your grids for yourself online, and you can change the background image just by using this little drop-down menu if you want to focus in on something. But we prefer to look at the full change grid whenever possible so we can read through the layers. Now, when it comes to recognizing when you're the difficult, how we phrased it, recognizing when you are the difficult person. We said, well, the ideal location for this activity is really to be a driven, amiable driver. Now, why is the driver energy primary? Because you're trying to accomplish something. You're trying to do something. You're trying to make sure that you recognize when you are the difficult person. So, that's it. There's that. But it's got to come from an amiable place, a place of caring about other people, about how it's impacting other people, etc. And so that's it. The whole point is that you don't want to be the difficult person. You want whatever the difficulty is to be focused on the subject matter, the issue, the situation, not based on you versus them. And so ideally, for you to make sure that you are not the difficult person, you want to keep yourself in that amiable driver energy. So yeah, you want to accomplish something. Yes, there are things that need to be dealt with. However, you want to make sure that you are coming to it from a good heart sort of place. Interestingly enough, one person plotted there, individual H, that's Anja, there you are. And the average is the triangle, and that triangle is almost right on top of that diamond. And so overall, you guys are averaging out to there. However, as you've heard me say many times before, no one represents the average. You're all scattered all over the place. It's just mathematically, you average out to there. So we've got a lot of different respondents with a lot of different views on how they go about recognizing when they're being the difficult person. Now, when it comes to respondents C and F, you guys know who you are. You are a bit further out grid than is necessary there, certainly more intense than we would really want you to be, and also very much engaged. You're like making it happen. Is making sure that, or recognizing when you're being the difficult person, is that something that you want to make happen or something you want to let happen? Yeah, it shouldn't take this amount of intensity, this amount of focus. It shouldn't take this amount of ability. And you gave your ability a 10, it only needed an 8. So you got a lot more ability than the task at hand even requires. And so does that mean you might be putting a lot more energy into it, scrutinizing yourself about you being the difficult person? Now, because we've all seen your full grid, I can tell you that you believe that you are the difficult person to some degree. You recognized, you in your own words said, you know that this is how you are. You even know why this is the way you are, right? And so how do we get you to stop?
Yeah. And you know what, I was thinking about this one because I am F. I'm like, yeah, I just got to do it. I just got to make this happen. But the challenge becomes is that energy trade-off. So it takes a lot to recover from that.
Well, and it does. But the question is, does it take more energy to clean up the mess, or does it take more energy to get yourself square before you get
A
into
little bit of both, because to be honest, the way
Oh.
that this was put together, I didn't really care about the mess per se. Like that wasn't, like, I'm just being honest. Like that was not at the forefront of my mind. Like,
Well, it wasn't. However, you did rate the importance of the activity very high. So
right.
your individual F, you surrounded this with a red circle. That means that the red circle means that you rated the importance very high. Or scratch that. The number is the importance. So the F is
Right.
red. You're the one who indicated that. You also said it's a big job. That's what the circle actually represents. So
That just means that you're dedicated to making these idiots toe the line.
that's really
That's
great.
what it tells me.
How's that dog fire for you, Brian?
So
I'm gonna-
Brian, if you want a coach to help
Bless
you
you,
mellow
Brian.
out, you come to me. But if you want a coach to help you build that fire and get out there, you talk to Anja.
How many have you actually converted?
No one.
Right.
They actually have come around, but
Come on, there have been.
yeah, but it's still it's
important.
cumbersome because then it's like
Yeah,
You're just
fragile.
scheduling.
well, whatever.
Yeah. Now, again, going back to the group overall, we were looking for people to say, when it comes to recognizing when I'm being the difficult person, I don't need a whole lot of mastery to be able to do that. I just need to be fully aware. So 8 on that ability scale was plenty. If you're a 9, a 10, 11, or 12 when it comes to recognizing when you're being difficult, that's okay. It's just more than than a solid performance on that activity would require. Now, 4 of you, that's half of this particular population, have rated your ability very, very nicely. So you know how to do it. However, we do have 4 other people who rated their ability as under that 8. So we have a couple at 7, 1 at 6, 1 even at 5. And so there is some learning that can happen here. So I would encourage you guys to go to that, the second part of the article, if you want to kind of read how to do that. We can also use this as a subject. If you guys would like to do a deeper dive into how do you go about, do you want me to do a small session on the subject of dealing with difficult people and give you all the advice points? Do it, more as a course. Not all the activities we'll be looking at, or not all the situations we'll be looking at, I think, merit that, but some of them might. And we are often looking for things to discuss on the practitioner summit or on the Circle of Brilliance calls as well. So yeah, anyway, there you go.
What's with B? Being, because it's like it's in the green circle. So what's the challenge?
Yeah,
there?
individual B is basically saying this is not a very big task. It's very important. My ability is an 8, and I only see the challenge as being 4. See, the ratio is what's important. This individual B is actually saying that my ability, again, an 8, is double what the challenge is. I've got double the amount of ability the challenge at hand seems to require. So if anything, I would say this is an individual who perceives himself as having a very solid track record on dealing with these kinds of things. Maybe it's their personality. They're more observant than they are, I want to say, forward in their presentation of thoughts and ideas and feelings and all that. So they may very well have really developed a tremendous amount of aptitude around this. That being said, we do get concerned that as the perceived level of ability goes down, people pay less and less attention to something. And so if it's been mastered, that'll serve you well for a certain period of time. But over the course of time, all activities are going to move further and further down grid on the change grid, in which case, let me change the background image to the response states. You may very well find yourself moving out of power, which is where we want you to be, into power apathy, which is where this individual is right now. And ultimately that may move further down grid. So there is a certain level of competence that this reflects, and that could be serving the individual very, very well. Just know that you got to stay vigilant. You still always have to wonder. So periodically you would need to just check in with your own behavior. In fact, in that activity that says there's you a little bit of a debrief following the thing. How do we put this? Reflecting on interactions to identify areas of growth. That's activity number 12. That may be something that you want to make sure you're deliberately doing so that you're not slipping downgrade and taking things for granted. Yeah, okay. So does that make sense why a downgrade plotting may not always serve you well in the long run?
Yeah.
Right. The
Right.
natural progression to move downward, right?
Natural movement on the change grid is downgrade.
Downward.
Over the course of time, through osmosis alone, you're likely to perceive that your ability goes up to meet challenges that you encounter a same or similar challenge over and over and over again. Life becomes more and more predictable. And unfortunately, what I said was that people pay attention to where they find their tension. The corollary to that is also true. People don't pay much attention to where they don't have very much tension. And so that lower plotting, although power apathy is not something to be fretting about quite yet, nevertheless, it is lower on the change grid than might be serving your growth and development. Yeah. Thoughts about that? Other thoughts about that? Okay, well, while I'm looking at this, reflecting on interactions, although it wasn't one of the ones you guys considered most important, let's just go ahead and look at the change grid there for a second. And you can see where people are plotting on this. Let me go back to the composite change grid. Oh, no. Wrong background. Composite change grid. Let's zoom in a little bit on it so you can see that when it comes to doing that post-mortem, if you will, doing that reflection, we want you to be an analytical driver around that. So again, if I change the background image where F is plotting that, okay, so Brian,
Yeah,
Brian,
I got one
the
right.
you are in the ideal location when it comes to doing that reflection. Although as a coach, my question would be to you, and based on that reflection, are you modifying things? Are you following through on whatever those reflections revealed? And
Not as readily and easily.
not as readily and easily, in which case we would say we need to
Awesome.
actually move things upgrade a little bit when it comes to
Yeah,
follow
need
through.
to be more consistent.
More
definitely.
consistent, more accountable, because ultimately, though, they're not the only ones who are paying the price of you not resolving some of these outgrid danger zone issues that you had. You're the one who's also, if you will, torturing yourself with
Yeah.
these expectations, these responses, these preliminary arguments haven't even occurred yet, but they're live in your head. So,
Yeah, that's
you
the
know,
hardest part, quite honestly, because
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
quite hard on myself. So you can imagine the
right.
expectations I have of others.
Right. And so, we're going to need to help you develop some in-grid maneuvers to help you counteract
Yeah.
those sorts of things. Okay. So all that said, this is the ideal location because reflecting is obviously an analytical activity, and you're doing it for a reason. That's why the driver energy is primary. You're trying to grow, you're trying to develop. And so in the act of that, or part of the act of doing that, you're going to do these reflections about how things turned out. Now, you might not sit down and find yourself a lovely cup of tea or glass of wine and say, let me reflect. Your reflection may actually take the form of sharing the story with other people, where you said, let me tell you what I had to deal with today. And as you are kind of reviewing what all happened, you may very well go, wow, that did happen. And then that did happen. You may have some ahas, but those ahas may not be coming from a place of contemplation and cool, objective assessment, but rather in the sharing of it with other people. Again,
I can see Brian writing in his journal.
yeah, Brian would write in his journal.
Exactly, yeah. And that's when I have to go back, or at least that's my response, is to go back and apologize.
Well,
Because
right,
I
because
don't
can
feel
you
good.
imagine that if the way that you process dealing with a challenging situation is to revisit and rehash that challenging situation with multiple people individually or as a group, what do you think? What do you think of that approach for development? Is that productive or counterproductive? What do you think?
To say that again?
To basically bellyache about every conflict you've had with other people, with everybody else you know.
Oh, no.
Yeah, right. It's just, misery loves company. And so, but I do believe that even though it may not have been your intention, as you start to just have these conversations with other people, you start dumping on them, you may very well start to recognize that one, if not the only consistent factor in all of the conflicts you have with other people is who?
Me.
Yeah. And so just maybe that's where the reflection is going to begin. Okay, anyway.
So with that in mind, then what's wrong with the being in the green circle?
Well, the thing about the green circle is that the green circle is a place. Let me change the background image so people know what we're talking about. We call this layer balance. And again, for everyone, we want to live as much of our life as we can inside of the green circle. Inside of the green circle is a place where we allow life to happen. We are in it, we're observing it, but we don't necessarily get pulled in to any kind of an agenda or an action or whatever. We're very observant, we're very aware of what's going on, but we have not necessarily chosen to do something about it. When we're talking about something that's growth oriented, we need to get out there between the green circle and the red circle, where what happens between the green circle and the red circle, everyone?
Life is lived.
That's where life is lived. You just had an interaction with someone outside of you. And by the way, it might be another person, but very often these conversations, these difficult people are in totally one-sided situations. So for example, if you're on social media or you're watching the news or you're reading something, you're getting a lot of information from that. You might be getting a lot of difficulty from that. A lot of conflict kind of feelings are coming from all that. But in that moment, you can't do anything to the person or the entity that's given that information to you, right? You're the receiver of it. There's nothing there in the moment you can really do. So ultimately, it's more about how do you go about dealing with the difficult people who you can't directly deal with. You with me on this? It's more about dealing with their aftermath, dealing with their impact on you personally. All right. And so my point is that this is all life being lived. You're out there either working with actual people on actual issues, or you're being exposed to these kinds of difficult situations, whatever, suggestions, input, opinion, reports, whatever it is. You're out here doing it. For you to do the best job of working in that situation, you got to step out of your comfort zone. And so as you deal with this situation, a couple of great things happen. You are not only dealing with this situation, but what you're actually doing is enriching your in-grid experience, or rather your mid-grid experience, your in the green circle kind of experience. What you learn makes you an even better observer. What you've learned makes you even more, thoughtful about if and when and how you're going to go out there and interact with that situation, that person, that issue. You with me?
Yeah.
As I go through this. That being said, it will never be the case where this activity will ideally plot inside of it, because again, the activity is about performing that evaluation, reflecting on interactions to identify areas of growth. This is a deliberate, conscious choice that you're making to focus on something specific that happens between the green and the red circle. So it happens further out grid.
I love how all of those the activities on that list are interconnected in one way, because I can see how if I do like more of the reflecting, and I do it consistently, but in a deliberate way, it can impact some of the others that are.
Oh, absolutely. You know, look, the situation is dealing with difficult people. We can break it down into literally dozens. In fact, you guys did a 12 activity list. In the total activity list, I think we came up with something like 50 different activities that can be involved in this whole world of dealing with difficult people, because we could break it down to the actual skills that you need to be employing when you are formulating your responses to somebody. We can talk about how you manage your postures, your gestures, your facial expressions to not contribute to it. So there's a lot of mission critical activities that we could have looked at, but when we're doing this exploration, we want to start with something that's a little bit more general. And then if this experience or this exploration reveals to you that this is a problematic area for you, well, then you can reach out and we can give you the more in-depth profile if you want, or, there's umpteen different directions we can go with that sort of thing if you think that would be valuable. Now, what I need to point out, though, for this particular grid result is that most of you are plotting on or inside the green circle when it comes to reflecting on interactions to identify areas of growth. Now, yeah, you landed there because you rated your ability as moderate and the challenges being moderate. And so moderate puts us inside of this rather safe kind of place. So I'm going to ask you guys a gifted level students question and see if you can tell me, why is it that being inside of the green circle does not serve you well when it comes to reflecting on how that interaction went?
Because
Are you too calm?
You could be too calm. Yeah, go ahead, Anja. What were you going to throw in?
No motivation to do anything about it.
There's no real motivation. There's no real drive to do anything about it. So again, we can go back to our understanding of what being inside the red circle, or let alone at the center of the change grid, just inside the green circle, um, is that this is a place where we are observers of what's going on in the world around us. We are not actively participating. We are not actively engaged. We haven't formulated any kind of, let me go over here. We haven't formulated any kind of an intention, or rather an engagement around doing these things. Everything is inside of intention and awareness at most. And so what we really want to recognize is this, or I'll throw this out as the real question. Does it serve you well to be calm and detached and observant of the job of reflecting on something? Because what shape would that take? I kind of think that would take the shape of you simply allowing it to unfold in its own natural way, really not giving any real studious kind of effort into learning from whatever the experience was, just by saying like, well, we'll see what happens next time. You know, do you really want to leave it that organic, that much to happenstance?
No.
You know, or you really want to go like, no, if I want to get really good at dealing with difficult people and benefit in all the ways I'm going to benefit from doing that, then there's work to be done. And that work is not about observing, it's about reflecting something very deliberate, very conscious. Okay, thoughts about that?
No, it all makes great sense.
All right, let me do one more and see where we're at. I don't want to go back to I should have written down which ones were most important, but I think one of them was about maintaining calm.
Yeah, I think it was 4, 7.
Yeah, 4 was definitely one. I think 3 was one as well. But let's go ahead and look at number 4. Let's view the change grid. Okay, maintaining calm. Now, the calmest placed on the change grid is where?
The center.
The exact center of the change grid. So if you want to be calm, you want to be detached, you want to be observant, you want to do all those things that kind of give you some sense of peace and balance and harmony. The center of the change grid is the ideal location for that. Quite honestly, anywhere inside of the green circle, I'll be a happy camper. But nevertheless, that's where you would really, really like to be, because being calm should be a foundational state. It should be your starting point on every day. If you are getting out of bed and you're immediately up grid or out grid, this is not the way for you to start your day. You guys with me on that? Yeah, too much cortisol too fast, too many endorphins too fast, too much dopamine too fast. You know, Brian, am I right? You're our clinician here.
Yes.
So we don't need that. We need to say, I can operate my entire life from a place of calm. So no matter how chaotic, no matter what's going on between that green and red circle, whether it's something that's putting you up, let me change the background here, whether it's something that's putting you up in stress or way out grid where you're a driven driver, or down grid where you're in power apathy or apathy, you are able to maintain a calm state, regardless of what's going on around you. Now, you guys might not think that's really true, but there's been countless examples of this that have been presented from every walk of life you can think of. The one that comes to mind at this moment is snipers. In order for a sniper to do their absolute best precision work, where do you think they are on the change grid?
Very calm.
They've got to be very calm, very relaxed, very detached, very observant. All those things are happening inside of this green circle. And so I'm saying to you that whether the situation you're in is ridiculous or sublime, life-threatening, or another, day of life, you can learn how to achieve and maintain this calmness in a world of chaos that's happening around you. All right. So now,
You know what, T, I preach this, that, like NLP, you kind of have to match them. And so I always say match their energy, but without the negativity. So if you're too calm, wholehearted, they don't feel connected, almost like you're ignoring their issue. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you do
Well-
intuitively have to know when to shift.
Right. Let's talk about that though, because you're bringing up NLP, which is a very powerful skill set for people to have in working with themselves and working with others. It is possible for me to do highly calculated behaviors like the matching and mirroring and pacing that's talked about in neurolinguistic programming for establishing greater levels of rapport, making someone feel more comfortable with you so their guard can come down, et cetera. They can let the defenses come down. I can do all of those highly calculated, deliberate activities while I am still in a place of total calm, right? So I can certainly act as if, again, remember that NLP is about matching, mirroring, and pacing what the other person is doing. It's not about you at all. It's about you becoming whatever best matches for them, for the rapport to be established. I'm going to do the best job of that in the long run. Again, when you're learning it, you're practicing, that's a different thing, but that's a different activity. So learning how to mirror and process, blah, 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 those things could be elsewhere on the change grid. The activity, though, we're looking at is remaining calm. And so calm, again, is something that's at the center of the change grid. Now, you guys, on average, plotted a bit further out grid, to the right is out grid, than that. You plotted as a driven, amiable driver. If I go back to that particular layer about the energies, you guys can see that you are in the amiable driver subquadrant and you are leaning further out grid, further driven. That's why this triangle is out here, not in the middle or whatever. So you have a little bit more of that driver energy in the tertiary position. So you are a driven, amiable driver. So you really want to make this happen. You really want to, it's like you're working on being calm, you know? So how much drive do you think being calm benefits from? What do you guys
How much
think?
drive benefits from? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, how do I, if I'm calm and I want to become calm, how driven and relentless and focused do I need to be in order to achieve calm? What?
I don't know.
They're
Right.
opposite.
Yeah, they're opposite. And so
Yeah.
what we're basically saying here is that you guys reported your level of ability across the board as being 6 or higher, all the way up to an 11 when it comes to maintaining calm. So, Brian, you gave your ability an 11 for maintaining calm. And the challenge you reported was a 10. So if I was working with you one-on-one, I'd be saying to you,
It's
what on
constantly
earth makes remaining calm so challenging?
Right.
Because we need to work on that. There's a lot of benefit to helping you find how to get to this calm place so that you can summon it and get yourself there as quickly and easily as possible at will.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what this is really all about. So I will tell you that the driven driver experiences not a single moment of calm. So no, because this is a drive. This is relentless. I'm getting something done. I'm executing. I'm out here, you know, making it all happen. It's intense. There's nothing calm about that. Now they might say to you, yeah, but when I'm doing things like that, I'm in my element. I'm in my element. Well, that's fine. You're in your element. You're not calm. So calm is not your element. So,
Yeah, it's the exact opposite. Again, there's a energetic consequence for that.
that's right.
And that's how my year had been. That's why I, so appreciated the retreat, because I know how to get there. I've been there, right? But it just hasn't been as easy. That's why the challenge has
Okay,
been
let's
high for
just
me.
talk about that for a second. You just used the phrase, it hasn't been as easy.
Yeah,
When you
because
use
things
the
like
word it,
it's like too much stimulus. Again, it's when
right. But when
I
you
understand
describe something like that as an it, you are basically giving it life. You're basically saying that it has some sort of independent control over you And there is no it. You are the it. You with me
Yeah, but
on
what
this?
I'm describing by it is I can't describe it. Like there's something like the you that you're talking about for or I, the me,
Yeah.
is in a state of like, what the hell is going on that I've lost that sense of positivity and calm, and it's been
Mhm.
a wrestle as of late. Like that's why
Right.
I keep
Have,
asking a question about, oh, when you get
yeah.
older, start to
Well,
get
but
more.
the question I think is really not how have you lost it, but why are you not reclaiming it? It's not something that's been lost. It's a part of who you are. You've always been able to be calm. It's already something you know, you're familiar with, you're comfortable. All
Right.
that stuff is already there. It really is about just summoning that
Yeah,
rather
and
than
getting out to
thinking
my
there is
own
some.
way.
Yeah, otherwise using that word it's a very interesting thing when I hear people doing that personification of thoughts or whatever. That really doesn't exist. That it is a way of trying to explain or justify why you're not here. Just go
Yeah,
there. Just be calm.
yeah.
So now, yeah, we talk about how do we achieve calm. This gets into talking about PowerPoint maneuvers. What are the sorts of things that you know you could do in this very moment that would help you become more centered, more focused, whatever. It's different for every person. It's vitally important that you know what they are for you. And so if it's going for a walk, if it's spending some time in nature, if it's about meditating or journaling or having a cup of tea or whatever the behavior itself happens to be, if you know that that behavior is something that helps you in a moment, if not in an instant, get back to a place of being centered, calm, caring detachment. Remember, we talk about practicing the art of caring detachment. Then those are the things that obviously you want to do. So we don't need to figure out what it wants. We just need to recognize I need a cup of tea in my journal.
Mm, nice.
Yeah,
You
because
know
we're
what,
not going
T,
to answer this because it is a construction. We've created it.
Mm.
Yeah.
but is it possible to be calm emotionally, but mentally, cognitively driven? I almost
Oh, yeah.
feel, yeah, because I feel I can sometimes be the most productive and on one level intense when I am calm because I have that extra
That is
energy that's
correct.
not, yeah.
That is correct. But there is a big difference between someone who is performing an outgrid task, trying to accomplish something, make something happen, drive, get it all done,
Mhm.
who is coming to that from a foundation of calm versus
Mhm.
someone who is out there making this all happen and they're nowhere near calm. They're up in
Mhm.
stress. They're too far
Yeah.
driven. They're whatever. We want to recognize that from that place of calm, all things are still possible, but they're going to be experienced differently. So, for example, if you guys are on an operating table, would you like your surgeon to be calm?
In a sense, yes.
Yes. Would you like them to be calm even when something now they're going to do what needs to be done. Make no mistake about it. I'm not saying they're not going to deal with the issue, but would you like them to remain calm in a stressful situation?
Yes.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's
Because
it.
what does that calm allow them to do more effectively?
To make the most
Understand the
informed
situation,
decision.
react appropriately,
Mhm.
think better.
Exactly. All of it. So I want you guys to just recognize that being calm is a totally separate thing than dealing with life or whatever it is, wherever you happen to be on your change grid.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. More thoughts
Absolutely.
about that? Comments about that?
I love
No?
it. Love it.
All
I've
right.
always
I
said
think
that
too,
the task is to get out of one's own way. At least that's what I tell myself, is just get out of your own way.
Right. And so the best way for you to get out of your own way is to restore calm.
Yeah.
And you just have to figure out what those are. I know you ride bikes. I know
Mhm,
you like being outdoors. I know you journal. So
mhm.
Brian,
choose
that's like telling people, snap out of it.
Yeah. Or telling
right.
them,
Because
calm
just
down.
telling them to snap out of it isn't all that helpful. But let's say that you're dealing with someone that you have a close relationship with, and they know your PowerPoint maneuvers and you know their PowerPoint maneuvers. You
Mm,
wouldn't have to say snap out of it. You would say to them, why don't you go for a walk?
Right.
You know,
Right.
why don't you make yourself a cup of tea? Maybe you need a bubble bath,
Yeah.
whatever their PowerPoint maneuvers are very valuable things for you to know as an individual, but for you to know about the people that are in proximity to you, so that you can help them do that. Because honestly, snap out of it. People are going to go like, and how exactly do I do that? Well, you do that by
Right.
getting a cup of tea. You do that by whatever your PowerPoint maneuvers happen to be.
Yeah.
Right.
All
But
right.
that's like saying be spontaneous and do it now. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
it's a little bit of an yeah, yeah,
well, it is. But this again, when we're working
Yeah.
with a client like that, we would say to them, you have a choice. You can
yes.
either take some moments to find calm and centered, get
Mhm.
back to that recharged battery state where you're good, restoring you, and then return to whatever the issue happens to be. Or
Mhm.
you can just say, no, I'm just going to stay where the issue is and hope for the best.
Mhm.
So hope is not a strategy.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that people realize that the best decisions you are ever going to make begin with you finding this peaceful, calm, detached, centered
Mhm.
sort of place. From that place, you can then look at everything that needs to be done. And by the way, maybe you don't need to go all the way out to the red and green, to the red circle or between the red and the green. Maybe just maybe the task that needs to be done can be something that can be accomplished while you're still inside of your green circle.
Mm,
That's what we're talking about.
very nice.
And I think everybody has to be aware of their emotional triggers, don't you? Because I can stay pretty dang calm, but you hit a couple of those triggers and I go ballistic.
Right.
It's
Well, that happens to be an activity.
Good to
Let's look at
know.
number 3. Managing my emotions, biases, and emotional triggers before engaging with that difficult individual. So we'll just, for the sake of what Edie just put forth, we'll just generalize it too. But nevertheless, let's see how are people at managing emotions, etc., before they get into that. And you can see this is where everybody's plotting. Not surprising, Brian's a little bit out there. We think that in order for you to do the best job on this particular activity, again, managing your own biases, etc., thoughts, feelings, etc., you need to be right on that border between an amiable driver and an analytical driver. So right there, a little bit of blend, because you got to care about yourself. That's that amiable energy. And you got to understand something, and that's that analytical energy. And you're trying to get this accomplished, which is the overall driver energy. So you guys understand why this is a good spot for that?
Right.
So now, when I look at this change grid, I see that we've got a lot of people who are reporting a level of ability that is lower than we would like. And so there's an educational opportunity here. So again, I would say if you want to read the article or if you want to do a deeper dive into this specific subject matter, we can always do that. So that might help you to boost your perceived level of ability to where we'd like it. But I do notice that we've got 1, 2, 3, and although A and G are technically outside of the green circle, they're so darn close to it, I want to kind of include them and what I'm about to say. When it comes to managing my own biases, emotions, etc., if you are inside the green circle, you have a little bit more about, well, let's wait and see. Let's observe it. Let's stay detached from it. And then we'll see what we learn from doing that. So there's not a whole lot of stuff going on here to optimize that particular activity to do it. And so I think we would need to say, not only do you guys might benefit from a little bit more training on how to go about evaluating, like if I said to you guys, if I gave you a list of the 20 most commonly discussed biases that humans in our culture experience, would you guys be able to rattle off what your biases are? Or would you kind of go like, no, I need to see the list? I mean, biased people don't realize when they're biased, and all of us are biased people. So it should not be surprising that we don't recognize that we're biased, because for us, it's just normal.
Right.
That's how we think. That's what we believe. Those are our values. And so, yeah, we have to really take a critical look at our biases by reflecting on that. So there is definitely some work to be done on this particular activity. And it is both a caring and an analytical task. to do this. Yeah.
Mhm.
See enough, you're saying you got plenty of ability to do it. You can actually chill a little bit back and you do it a little bit more effectively. So if you were way out grid on this particular task of managing your biases, do you think that I can make myself a more open individual by having more outgrid energy?
Mm-mm.
Is the outgrid energy more open or more closed as you move
Yeah,
further and further
closed.
out?
Closed.
More closed.
Yeah.
We need to stay open. And so that's moving ourselves a little bit more in grid. Okay, so that's pretty much our time for today. Let me just check in with you guys. Did you find this an interesting little glimpse
Yes.
of some of the
Yes.
Very interesting. Yep.
Yes.
Mhm.
Now, again, as people that are involved in the Oracle of the Self, as people that are explorers, you do want to make sure that after these calls are done, that you do take a look at your own change grid and look at all the activities and see if you can decide where you are, where you should be, how's it all working out for you. And again, plenty of resources up on the Patreon page, so you can look at what we have there to do this. So patreon.com/ChangeWorks is how you get to our Patreon. All right, so with that, we will edit this and I will put this up on YouTube. And I'll also make sure that all of you guys receive the second part of the article that gets into some of the strategies on how you can go about dealing with these. Yes,
Patreon /
ChangeWorks.
ChangeWorks. Okay.
Patreon.com/ChangeWorks.
Patreon.com.
Yeah,
Forward.
yeah. So yeah, patreon.com/ChangeWorks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. All righty. Okay. So thanks everybody. Now, next week I will send you what the exploration is going to be. There's 2 of them that you guys have suggested. I'll let you be surprised by which one you get. So as soon as you
Okay.
receive the link to complete the profile, do feel free to do that. All I need in preparation for a call like this is to have you guys make sure you fill it out at least 30 minutes before the call actually begins. So, all
Okay.
right. So with that, thank you all very much for joining in. Have
Bye,
a
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
bye.
Thank you so much,
Thanks.
coaching.
Bye.